Okay, welcome to part two here, hopping right into some good stuff. Mega cryometers. Oh boy, these are pretty crazy weather phenomenon. And it looks to be something that is formed in our atmosphere, but nobody really knows for sure. Huge blocks of ice fall from the sky, much, much, much bigger than hail. And we're looking at tens of pounds, and in some cases, well over 100 and even over 1,000 pounds. And if you're wondering if this is associated with aircraft, well, they have been reported in the 1800s in Brazil and Spain. There was a week straight in Spain where these things rained down from the sky, weighing hundreds of pounds, and had left everybody scratching their heads. And now that we have more population, they've done some damage. October 2006, a 6-pound chunk of ice fell through a roof in York, PA. This does look like a dirty ball of ice, but that's just the debris it hit in the house. These things are made out of pure water, so it's likely they formed terrestrially here. It's not out of the question. They did originate in outer space. Nobody really knows. Usually these things occur in cloud-free conditions, which is even more of a head-scratcher, but again, they're composed of pure water, so not related to an airplane toilet or ice forming on rockets or any other kind of aircraft. The best explanation we could come with is the jet stream winds upwards of 200 miles per hour suspend these balls of ice in the sky until they can accrete enough of a weight of ice to fall to Earth. But it is really hard to wrap our heads around how we can suspend something that weighs hundreds of pounds in the atmosphere. But it happens some way or another. Otherwise, a few other things that could be mistaken as UFOs here. The International Space Station, and of course, bright planets. The International Space Station is very bright. It can be brighter than Venus, and it slowly crosses the sky, so it is shockingly different than any kind of aircraft out there. It doesn't blink. It's a steady state, and it moves rather slowly. It takes about a minute to cross the sky. So that is an explanation for some of the UFO reports we see. We're looking at International Space Station transiting the sun. It moves very quickly across something as small as the disk of the sun. This would happen in a matter of a second, so high-speed camera snapped these shots as it moved in front of the sun here. A very, very cool shot. Also, we have satellite iridium flares, which look to come out of nowhere. It's basically, if you sat back and looked at the night sky, you've probably seen satellites moving slowly through the stars. They're about the same brightness as a faint star out there, and they move steadily and slowly brighten and slowly dim. But sometimes the solar panels hit the sun just right, and we get what's called an iridium flare, where it can be way brighter than Venus and just grab your attention and could shock some people into thinking, oh boy, that's a UFO. Okay, moving along to some space weather phenomenon. Really fun one here. The auroras. Okay, why do the auroras form? Well, basically, they're triggered by pieces of the sun hitting the Earth. This is a coronal mass ejection associated with solar flares. Not every solar flare produces one of these CMEs, but when they happen, charged particles, this little tiny pieces of the sun, hit the Earth's magnetic field. They're funneled in with the magnetic field towards the North Pole and the South Pole, and that because of where the magnetic North and South Pole, I should say, so it's a little bit off of where the true North and South pole of the Earth are. But anyway, these particles really excite the upper atmospheric atoms and molecules, which are mostly made out of oxygen and nitrogen. And when these gases get excited, the little electrons that orbit an atom go into a higher energy orbit. They're further away from the center of the nucleus, and then they slowly calm down. And once they calm down and go to a lower level orbit, they emit a photon. And most of the time we see auroras, they're kind of greenish in color, so those are oxygen atoms, but nitrogen atoms also help trigger auroras. Many times those will appear a little bit fainter, but also as red, but even some cool purples and blues out there. So that's a little snippet about auroras. And this guy, Salama Paja, is in Finland, and he sent in some awesome pictures to the AccuWeather Astronomy Facebook page, and I'll try to share these as much as I can. There's some stunning images here of Finland. These were from last year. Just incredible shots. I'm just blown away by how it lights up the entire landscape here. So, of course, this is done with photography, long exposure photography, so it's a little brighter than it would appear to the naked eye. But I can't forget the Aurora Australis, and it's the same thing as the Aurora Borealis. It just occurs in the southern hemisphere, closer to the South Pole. You can see those from New Zealand. Otherwise, you have to be closer to Antarctica to get a good view on those. A few other space weather phenomena here. Lightning above thunderstorms. This is mostly known as sprites. Sprites were not photographed until the 80s when one of the space shuttles was orbiting the planet and saw this. And sprites go very high in the air. They're kind of cool lightning, if you will. Lightning below a thunderstorm is very hot. This is sort of a lightning to a lesser degree. It can be thought of as a fluorescent light, not quite as hot. But a blue jet here is a little different. It is more of a lightning strike, but not nearly as hot as some of the below ground strike. The blue gigantic jet lightning or blue jet lightning is very rare. I've read that there's only been about 100 pictures of this throughout history, most of those just since the 90s here. So I want to take a quick look at a time-lapse video of some of this. Here is a recent video from the Mauna Kea Observatory in Hawaii. You can see there we have that gigantic jet lightning head northward. This is an ongoing time-lapse camera that's always available online, again from Mauna Kea, mostly there to see the night sky. A rare thunderstorm low was tracking to the north of the Big Island here and really put on a show for us. We'll see another one of these gigantic blue lightning flashes here in a moment. There it goes. So wow, really cool stuff here. I could watch this stuff all night. So going back to the presentation here. All right, so we're going to continue on here. A few other things that really throw people for a loop. Rocket and missile vapor trails. These things, they just look crazy, basically. They happen. Military will be launching rockets, testing intercontinental ballistic missiles. One recent example here was late in 2015. We launched a missile out of a submarine capable of carrying a nuclear weapon. The rocket that did produce the show is one that does carry a nuclear warhead. But here's what it looked like as a time lapse over San Francisco here. I'm just going to let this play here. What's going on here is this is the same thing that forms jet contrails. It's very high in the atmosphere, though. We're looking 50 to 100 miles up, whereas jets obviously are much lower. So this was just after sunset, about an hour or two after sunset. The sun's still hitting the atmosphere this high up. So it's basically illuminating this water vapor up there to make it look like something it isn't. But this really caught a lot of folks by surprise up and down the California coast. Here are some images from Southern California. And notice how the bright city lights here in Los Angeles, and you're still able to clearly see it. So people thought that was a UFO as well. Here we go. Artificial clouds. A recent launch from Wallops Island produced these clouds here. They were trying to mimic an aurora here. Basically, these clouds are 50 to 100 miles up, and they wanted to track upper level winds to see how these objects moved here. So this is the first launch of what will be many. So some other cool light phenomena here. Here are light pillars. This happens in very cold climates. When city lights shine up through ice crystals, you need it cold enough to get ice crystals to be suspended in midair. This usually occurs when you're colder than, say, 30 to 40 degrees below zero. So a lot of this occurs in Russia or in Finland, like in this case here. And the guy was in a city and looked up and he saw the light pillars shining a map of his city in the sky. So I tried to circle both areas here to show how close together the light pillar matches the map. So really, really cool stuff. Another light pillar here, just a really brief snippet about this. We have orange lights and the white lights, and all that is, the orange lights are the old halogen lights, but they're installing more and more of these LED lights that are very bright. Unfortunately, they cause a lot of light pollution. So even though they're more energy efficient, they put out brighter lights. And yeah, so the bad news for astronomers here is these will likely become more of a standard issue in most towns. So quickly here, I'm going to go over lenticular clouds here. These are often saucer-shaped and can be confused with UFOs. So what you're seeing here is a wave cloud. The wind is squeezed over the top of a mountain. There's an inversion which keeps the cloud from going much higher. It also forces the wind over the top of the mountain. So while this cloud's stationary, it's indicative of a weather pattern that many times brings damaging wind gusts downwind from the mountain. So here's a few other cool of those lenticular clouds. Different saucer-shaped cloud here, but completely different than those lenticular clouds. These are full-fledged severe thunderstorms towering 60 to 70,000 feet in the atmosphere, and they many times rotate, and by rotating they take on a circular appearance here. These are some severe storms we saw, me and Maggie Samuel, in Michigan. Incredible shots here with the green, a glowing cloud over the Green Lake. If you've ever seen a Lake Michigan, it is just fantastically clear. It looks like the Caribbean. And here is a photo my wife Maggie took this past summer of a thunderstorm approaching, just an incredible shelf cloud. And we will look at her video here that she took, a panoramic video. Just check this out. This is as cool as it gets. Yep, she was a little excited when she filmed this. So, yeah, that's about as cool as it gets here. All right, moving right along here. Noctilucent clouds, these are triggered by meteor smoke. These clouds are 50 miles high to as high as 75 miles. New phenomenon. There's speculation that global warming, changes in the atmospheric moisture and temperatures, has really increased the coverage of these clouds in recent years. Now I'm going to talk about a few cool weather events that I just found fascinating. The April 2011 super outbreak of tornadoes. Here is a stretch of 4 days in April. Each one of those little lines and dots is a tornado, anywhere from purple being EF0 to red being EF5. I'm going to take a look at a Tuscaloosa tornado because this one caught my eye. This is the only tornado I've ever seen that had arms. It was just spectacular, and this crazy guy took video of it so that we were able to see it. I'm going to back it up here. See the trees to the left there? Watch as the tornado approaches. Those trees are pulled in by the inflow and really just a devastating effect. So we have a minute here. I'm going to take a look at this video here, so just to bear with me. I'm going to speed it up a little bit so we get right to the good stuff here. Now watch as these feeder arms, if you will. There's just so much moisture. This tornado feeds off of water vapor, and it sucks it in like a car engine sucks in gasoline, so it pulls it. Usually these things pull in the moisture from the ground, but this one, there's so much moisture available, it was able to draw it in from the side. So this tornado got closer and closer, really producing devastating effects. This guy goes outside to get a closer view of it. He's kind of a nutcase. If you listen to this video, you can hear his wife yelling at him in the background, "Hey, get inside, what are you doing?" So we'll watch the tornado pass perilously close to him. You can see all the debris from this tornado. And what we'll see here that is really wild is the inflow. The inflow is on the back side of this tornado. So the wind's going towards the tornado now. Just wait until it passes and watch what the wind does as the tornado passes. There goes pieces of this guy's roof. So here comes the inflow. Whoosh. And this is what really did the damage. And as the video clears up, you can see that when he looks out, those trees over here are nothing like they were previously. So to wrap it up here, one more event I want to take a look at. Hurricane Andrew, near and dear to me. My grandmother went through the northern eye wall of Hurricane Andrew with 200-mile-an-hour winds. If there's any doubt I was going to be a meteorologist at the age of 14, this really just pushed me all the way into becoming one. I was already pretty sure I'd be a meteorologist. So believe it or not, only Cat 5 landfall in the last 48 years. So it's been a while. This one, it was a buzzsaw, did $225 billion worth of damage with 200-mile-an-hour winds. But that happened in a very small area, about 10 miles inland from the coast, 10 to 20 miles inland, and over about a 20 or 25-mile swath of the coast. So it hit just south of Miami, so it could have been even worse. And there was this buzzsaw going in just south of Miami. Downtown Miami really missed the worst. People in Miami were shocked when they got the footage of what happened further south. You could see this is what the scenes look like after an F5 tornado, but there was mile after mile after mile of this. This guy was in Homestead, and this quote just gave me chills. The wind was whistling a death wish. My grandmother just talked about how the wind sounded during the peak of the storm, just a high-pitched scream, unrelenting scream. The only thing that broke it up was debris hitting the house and smashing it. She was safe. She was fine. Her house was built very well back in the 1950s. It was all the houses built in the 70s and 80s around her that turned out to produce these pictures of a complete destruction here. You can see just places torn apart. It looks like a nuke went off, and this is what the shockwave looked like. Here's Homestead Air Force Base. F-16 jets pulled out of hangars, tossed around like toys. Shopping centers completely leveled. This is one I hope folks don't forget because the way the East Coast is built up now, if we get another Category 5 to hit a highly populated area, it's going to be a complete complete disaster. I would love for everybody, if they want to know more about Hurricane Andrew, this is the best documentary done about Hurricane Andrew. And Brian Norcross, famous because of the hurricane, but he really was spectacular throughout the event. So that's it. Thanks for listening to us. Me and Maggie are glad you could be with us. Please check out AccuWeather Astronomy Facebook and Twitter for all the latest, and you can check out my personal Twitter account with this link as well. Have a great day, everybody.